Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about when I hired out on Grand Trunk as a painter. It was in this room, this room was divided up into offices. And one particular room where I hired out, and then a few years later, when a job opening came in as a switchman, I went to the other end of the building and talked to Wayne Cook, who was the general yardmaster. And, he said, you just go back and talk to Don Pyatt, who was the B&B supervisor. And said, just tell him you want to transfer. And, so I did that. And Don Pyatt said, I'm not transferring. I went back down to the hall and talked to Mr. Cook again. And he said, you just go down the hall, you tell that guy you quit. And then come right back down here and see me. And he said, I'll hire you on the spot. He said, you won't have any break of service, and you won't lose any vacation, and it'll work out perfect. And which it did. It did. It was kind of scary for a young kid, you know, thinking that, well, if I tell him I'm quitting, and then he decides he's not going to hire me, then I don't have a job at all. But it worked out fine. It worked out fine. It was a fun time.
So you mentioned some of your siblings worked for the railroad as well? Yeah, so what kind of different kind of jobs did they have?
My father was the water service foreman for the Detroit division, and sometimes was down in the Chicago area, which was not part of the Detroit division. He was, his job, he had the responsibility of taking care of all the water supply for all of the Grand Trunk buildings, not the rolling stock, not the engines or anything like that, but for heating, the cooling, even they would even build all their own eave troughs and downspouts and things. From where we're sitting here, there was a big building down there. They called it the Tin Shop, and that's where they made all that stuff. My dad, like I said, was in Chicago for several years, and then came here. I'm not sure when that was. I think 1968, and then he finished his career here through 78 when he retired. He had a brother that worked for him in that same department, a brother-in-law that worked for him in that same department, and another brother that worked in the track department. Those are all his brothers. And then I had my brother Elmer worked in the track department. He also worked in transportation for a time. My brother Jerry and my brother Ben both worked in the track department. That's pretty much it. And then some various uncles that worked on the railroad as well.
So you mentioned just briefly that you know the building, the tin shop that was here. Can you remember any other type of structures that used to be around here that aren't anymore?
Well, from where we're at here, just outside, there's a spot out here that's called the Diamond, where the tracks cross. And there used to be a little, it's called the Diamond Shanty. And back in the earlier days, there was a man, he was some people called him the Diamond Master, but he was the flagman. And there was a gate that swung manually there at the Diamond. And it was his responsibility and his authority. The trains never went by here without his authority. He would swing the gate and then give them a signal with a yellow lantern and or a yellow flag. And so that's gone. And of course there's the roundhouse that was here in Durand, and that was torn down in 1961. the old coal dock is still here, and there's a picture of that in that mural behind you. And the tin shop, or the grocery house, which was, the tin shop was part of that. It's called the grocery house because years ago there was a lot of produce and so forth that went through there. And so that building is gone. The old freight dock is gone, where Armor Meat used to have their refrigerator cars come in. That's gone. The old work equipment shop is gone. The old water tower that's just off to our right is gone. Yeah, so there's a lot of structures that have met their demise over the course of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, what else do you think has changed about, the railroad? If there was, I know there's probably quite a bit, but if there's anything in particular that strikes you.
Well, for me, the thing that I miss most of all is that caboose at the end of the train. And I know that, technology is just, taking us away from that, but it's like, that's not really a train unless there's a caboose on the end of it. So that's, that's, to me, I know it's an advancement, but it's like a negative to me, because it's part of what I grew up with, part of what I saw, part of what I worked with. So, yeah, that's a negative. I miss seeing the cars come through here that carried cattle. And back in those days, they used to, there was requirements that I'm not sure about. I think they had to be unloaded every either 24 or 48 hours. They had to be unloaded, they had to be fed, they had to be watered, they had to be in a place where they could be exercised. So if those cars were in that time frame, then they would be switched out and taken down here in the yards where they had like a stockyard down there, where they unloaded the cattle and let them out and let them roam around, and then they reload them and off they go again. So that's another part that's gone. And there's an ordinance in the city of Durant that they don't allow the trains to blow their whistle. So there's no horns. And that's, I'm used to it now, but that's strange.
Any other kind of, so you mentioned, like the caboose being technological changes. I mean, are there any can you think of any other, different types of technology you saw kind of come and go?
It's kind of like universally in everything now, with the advent of the computers coming in, and we dealt with the reams of paper in the railroad industry, and even when we were moving freight as a conductor, you were responsible. You wrote all of those cars down, every one that you had, the contents, where it was going. It was a massive job. If you had 70, 80 cars or 100 cars in your consist, that was a lot of paperwork to do. And so that's just been done away with. Everything is electronic now. So in a sense, it's good. It takes away from a lot of physical work. And everything is automated now with signaling devices and automatic switches and that sort of thing. You still have to know a lot. You still have to be well versed in what's going on, but a lot of the physical things have been done away with because of automation.
Okay. And with it, then some of the jobs that were associated with those physical things?
When I began my career, if you talked about a train crew, it was 5 people. There was a fireman, there was an engineer, there was a head brakeman, there was a conductor, and there was a flagman, or a rear brakeman. Same job description. And now, if you see one of these trains go by, there's going to be 2 people on that. There's going to be the engineer, and there's going to be a conductor, if you will. And the conductor has all the responsibility of the conductor, the flagman, and the head brakeman. So that's a big change.
And what did the fireman do? What was the fireman's responsibility?
Well, a fireman had just kind of been phased out because the fireman was the one who tended the fire.
Oh, okay.
Kept the steam pressure up so they could motor, and that would just kind of, by way of attrition, just.
Oh, so with the transition to diesel engines then?
Right.
Okay, you don't need this, okay.
And Grand Trunk did away, I think we were the last railroad to have steam passenger. And I think that disappeared in 1961. 1961, yeah. Might have been a little later than that, but I think around 1961.
Did you work with diesel as well?
With diesel?
Diesel trains.
Yeah, that was primarily everything that I did was with diesel. I did have an opportunity on a few occasions when we would have an excursion train come through, or in 1976 when they were running the Freedom Train around the world, around the United States. I had opportunity to work on that, so that was a fun time. And, I worked a few steam excursions from Detroit into Port Huron, and from Pontiac around through Romeo and Armada and Richmond up into Port Huron. I think I worked a couple from here to Muskegon, but for the most part, it was all diesel electric.
You mentioned a Freedom Train. What was that specifically?
Well, I don't know if I even remember a lot about it. It was a series of cars, and you could actually, I think people could actually ride it, but for the most part, it was like a historical adventure to go through, and it was like the railroad industry in these cars that they hauled around. And it was run by a big steam engine.
So it was like a traveling museum?
Yes, yeah. That's what I should have said.
And it was coincided, you said, with the bicentennial?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Well, if that's all, thank you for your time to be a part of this project. The information that you have provided will be preserved so that others who come after us will be able to access this information and learn a little about life on the railroads.